Warning, the views and opinions expressed in this presentation are those of the producer and those appearing in the show and do not necessarily represent the views of DerryCam, the Town of Derry, or any of its staff or affiliates. Hi, I'm Anthony Henry. Welcome back to America's Ask. We're on episode 50. This is our 50th show. We finally got here. I started this show in April of 2023. And now we're almost at a presidential election. And back then it seemed so far. And yeah, we're here. 50. I'm excited. And today we are here with someone who may be our next U.S. Congressman. Welcome, Mr. Russell Prescott.
Wow, thank you very much, Anthony.
Thank you. Please take a minute to introduce yourself to anyone who might not know you.
Right. Well, I grew up in Exeter. My mom and dad came from Quincy, Massachusetts in 1954 and started a business, R.E. Prescott. That's my dad's initials, Robert Elmer. He named me Russell Edward. So I'm an R.E. Prescott as well. The company's in Exeter, New Hampshire, where he started distributing well pumps and well tanks and water systems all over New England. And oh boy, and about 6 years later I was born. And he was so successful in his business that I was born in St. Petersburg, Florida. When he was on vacation, he had a home down there, and it was pretty cool to say that I'm a New Hampshire native, and yet I was born on vacation in Florida. So that's a nice thing to say about my childhood. Started with my father being in business and growing up knowing that he worked long hours, and my oldest, I was the youngest of the family, and my older children, my older siblings, were a great influence on me. They're, my older sister, my older brother, and then another older sister and older brother. So that was a big family. Growing up in Exeter, New Hampshire, went to Exeter High School, met my high school sweetheart, who's now my wife for 42 years. We got married in 1982 while I was in college. And I went to college for engineering. I have a professional engineer's license for 30 years and designed water systems all over this region, all over New England, because I did go right into the family business right out of college with a mechanical engineering degree. I also filed a bunch of patents, and 7 of them were awarded by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. That process is pretty drawn out. It takes about a year for them to get back to you and say, well, you're either part right, all wrong, or in between. It's quite the process. But we manufacture now in my family business the goods that I've designed, and we build them there and we distribute them all over New England. And my 3 oldest children, now that we've had 5 children, my 3 oldest are running the company. So that's a little bit of background about myself. Getting a patent, you have to tell them the truth or else they won't believe you. And I took that same attitude when I ran for the state senate. And I served in a state senate for 10 years. And also stopped the income tax from happening in New Hampshire twice. And stopped the sales tax from happening as well. And also balanced the budget while I was there in the state senate every single year. So the same thing I do in business every week is balance the budget, make sure that the paychecks don't bounce, and make sure that I plan a good future for the employees that are there. I believe in taking care of customers, but also employees as well. Customer service is important, but also in addition to a paycheck, our company supplies 100% of the health insurance premium for our employee, all of our employees. And also we have a profit sharing with a retirement program, and we do bonuses during the year. So that's a little bit about myself.
Well, you definitely have a business background, and you've had a lot of years in government. One thing that I find interesting about you is that you are, to my knowledge, the only person to have defeated Maggie Hassan.
Twice.
Twice,
yes. Yeah. Yep, in a Democrat district. It happened in 2002, and it happened in 2010. So during the time between those two events, I ran for the executive council, I think twice. I ran for the executive council twice, lost both times. But in 2010, I ran again for the state senate and won. And we repealed the income tax that Maggie Hassan had given us on LLCs at that time. And we balanced our budget. It ended up being an $800 million deficit when I got there. And we did it by not raising taxes. We did it by weighing every single line item in the costs of what we needed to appropriate for those line items, and figured out whether it was the needs for our state or was it a want for our state. We separated the two, and we were able to balance our budget by taking care of the needs of our state and prioritizing them. Something we need to do in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. We see a lot of unnecessary spending in D.C., I think.
Thank you.
Even at the local level, as I say every show, anyone that watches this show knows about Derry School Board, and I'll have an update on that later in the show, but they spend to make themselves look better with what they do, but they don't actually pay attention to how the costs impact the people that pay for them, the taxpayers.
Yes. Yes, and so when you are able to balance a budget without raising taxes, that's really the hard work of being able to keep the money in the voters' pockets. The middle class is going to get a tax cut. I mean, a tax increase on our income tax next year if we don't stand and say we got to maintain the tax cuts that were implemented in 2017. If we do not maintain those tax cuts, we will have between 12% to 16% increase in the brackets of our taxable income. And that amounts to 300 or 400 or 200 or 600, whatever dollars, wherever you lie in those tax brackets. That's how much more we're going to be spending per month on the new tax increases. So this morning I did a pledge that said I will not let a tax increase happen. I will vote against the tax increase next year in the federal government. And I've asked my opponent, Chris Pappas, to do the same, just to assure the middle class that in addition to all of the inflation that we have for the past 4 years of 30% inflation, we don't want another tax increase on our income to make that matter even worse.
So you're running against an incumbent that has been here for a few terms now.
Yeah.
I'd say he's fairly well known, but he's not fairly well seen. I feel that he's not really getting out there a lot. So, and some of your opponents in the primary, when they came on, they pointed that out as well. So what do you think of that, I guess? No real way to ask that, but
I think it's okay not to be seen as long as you're working to fulfill your obligations of office. And when we talk about a budget, in 1974, they passed a budget act and gave us a timeline in 12 different subcommittees to go over all of the appropriations of the federal government. If you're hard at work, working on those line items of the appropriations of our federal spending and making sure we only take care of our needs and not our wants, I think we can get down to having a balanced budget. But the way it's been going on for the last 4 years is contrary to the law, and where continuing resolutions happen, it is a big confusion and stress and just not normal procedure for the House of Representatives or the Senate. They're not following the law down there in Washington, D.C. So I would rather not see your local representative if they're working to get the job done and get a budget every single year, and make sure we continue to reduce the deficit. And of course, we'll end up getting to a balanced budget and be able to afford the future of our Social Security system so it does not go bankrupt.
And I imagine from that you'd want to be on the Appropriations Committee.
If that's the case, I need to go wherever I'm going to be best used. And I don't have any particular vision of where that's going to be. I just want to get down there and work hard.
Yeah, so where do you think some of your, obviously you're both from separate parties, but where do you think some of your, I guess, fundamental beliefs, maybe some things you want to see, you want to get passed, bills you want to sponsor, what are some things you want to do once you get to D.C.?
I think hold the administration accountable The executive branch has a certain obligation under the Constitution to execute our laws, to administer justice, to, just enforce our laws simply. And when we think of the border difficulties of all of these 10 million people that have come illegally into our country, the Border Patrol has said on several occasions, if you would just allow us to enforce the laws, we could stop 70% of the illegal immigration that is happening. So right now, if we think of 10 million people coming over the border in 4 years, that is every quarter about, 600,000 people every quarter, 2.5 million every year divided by 4. So 500 million, 600 million. I'm asking Chris Pappas as often as I can to, stand up for the Constitution, for law and order, ask the administration to enforce our laws, and make sure that we stop the next 600 million coming in over the border illegally. I've asked that many times, and I think it's deserving to be heard. We just need to get down there and enforce our laws. That's something that's not being done. Difference between myself and Chris Pappas. I will stand up to the administration, whatever administration it is.
Yeah, and continuing on the border, I mean, we've seen local cities such as Lawrence and, to a smaller extent, Manchester, becoming sanctuary cities. What would you do to get that blocked?
The idea of people coming here illegally and then not having the law and order established concerning that they can all of a sudden be a citizen of the United States is just cutting in line of all the others that have stood in line to become U.S. citizens. I have a former coach that I helped his wife, coach in high school, helped his wife become a U.S. citizen. He asked me to make a couple phone calls for him. He says, I'm having difficulty. And that process was the legitimate legal way of becoming a U.S. citizen. And it does take time. I think what we need to do is make sure that the immigration that we have allows all of the jobs that need to be filled. We need to make sure that our immigration system does one really big thing for New Hampshire businesses. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the whole United States at times. We need good, qualified people to come in and be part of our workforce as much as we can. And that's one thing that I think that we need to work very hard on, and something that is dear to my heart as well. The budget, making sure we balance it to make sure we can stop inflation and make the American dream more attainable than where it is right now is one, but also immigration reform and just enforce the laws immediately on the border so we can stop this influx of illegal immigration.
Yeah, I'll use Derry as an example. One of our new school board members is Wilbert Danger, a Haitian immigrant. Came here legally, very successful man. I work for Greek immigrants where I work at the pizza place in Hampstead. And, it's a slap in the face to people that came here legally and did it the right way when all these people are coming in here and getting handouts. I've used the Chelsea Soldiers Home as an example because my uncle lived in there when it was the old building, and now he lives in the new building, but the old building is now housed with illegals. They're getting their housing, they're getting their health care, they're getting their monthly checks, or weekly, I don't know what it is anymore, but it's just a slap in the face. It needs to stop. Like, they haven't done anything. Pappas has sided with all of Biden's positions the past few years, and we see it get worse and worse, not better.
Yeah, you want to, those are the two big subjects. The other, of course, is energy independence. When you look at your electric bill, it's because, and it's 30% more charge for each kilowatt hour. In the last 4 years, it's gone up 30%. That's because of the policies of the administration.
Yeah.
And those policies need to be reversed back to the previous administration's policies that allowed us to become energy independent. And it's good for our economy, but it's also good for our environment. It's better to have the use of our most clean refineries here refining oil for us than getting it from outside of our nation where it's not as well, it's not as environmentally sound to those refineries. So it'd be great for air quality, and it'd be great for our economy.
And moving on to the previous administration, we're about to get to the election. Mr. Prescott's running in that election, but we also have the presidential election, which could potentially decide the fate of where we go in the future. We have Kamala and Tim and Donald and JD, and I want to get your view on that. Where you think it's going to go? What do you think, either ticket would do?
Yes. I believe that, you look at polls, right? And I remember the polls of 2016 and how it was, on the paper of a poll, you look at it and say that there's no way that Donald Trump could win. There's just no way. And this year, he's even closer than he was to Hillary Clinton. And I believe that he has the opportunity to win. I think that the people of the United States are just figuring out that if we vote in another administration that's similar to the one we already have, and we have people like Chris Pappas who just go along, we're going to have an open border with another 10 million illegal immigrants coming into our country. That's very important to the people of New Hampshire for safety, for just tranquility. We just want more assurances that illegal immigrants are not going to come in unchecked. The second thing that will happen is our inflation will continue because there is no desire, not been shown, to balance our budget for the last 4 years, even earlier than that, of course. So I think it's time that we have the president, the House, and the Senate to be under Republican control if we are fiscally responsible, and prove it that we are going to be fiscally responsible. And that's what we need to do. And that opportunity could be coming up this November, that we're all on the same idea. We can secure our border with law and order. We can reduce our budget deficit with sound appropriations in those subcommittees, and just go line item by line item to take care of our needs and not our wants, and make sure we lower our budget deficit and bring down the national debt eventually after we have a balanced budget, secure Social Security for our next generations, and get to be energy independent again. And that'll spur all of those subjects will spur our economy. It'll lower our cost of the immigration issue if we secure our borders.
Yeah, when you brought up 2016 polls, I couldn't agree more. 2016 is the reason I don't trust polling whatsoever. Mm-hmm. It showed that, most of it, on both sides, not just the Democrat side, on our side too. I mean, Rasmussen, I don't know if anyone's heard about that, but there was just evidence, they were caught basically communicating with the Republican Party, National GOP, on, we'll send you some people to poll, basically, which I thought was interesting. Yeah, it's not just the Democrats, it's us too. So I don't trust polling whatsoever. The only thing I trust is people. I trust the vote when it's done right.
That's why I'm the prime sponsor of voter ID. Got it passed when I was in the state Senate. People need to have trust in our election process. And what separates myself from Chris Pappas is that Chris Pappas wanted to remove our voter ID law. He voted in the federal vote to just take away our state's rights to govern our own elections, to the point where our Secretary of State had to go down to Washington, D.C. to testify as this is what states do. It is our right to do. And even then, after our Secretary of State went down from New Hampshire, Chris Pappas still voted for taking away the rights of our states. And that's the oath of office, to uphold or to defend and support our Constitution. It's part of the Bill of Rights of our Constitution. The 10th Amendment is the states, if they don't give up those rights, which we haven't, I wrote the law and it passed. It didn't get vetoed by the Democrat Governor John Lynch. it became law. It passed under the scrutiny of Obama's judicial administration, and it's something that the state never gave up to the federal government. And still, Chris Pappas, even with his oath of office to uphold the Constitution, voted against the state of New Hampshire. That's the difference between him and I.
And that reminds me of another thing. You worked with him on the executive council, so you know him. You've seen him.
I know
work.
him, and I worked with him. So when we were on the executive council, you have the governor at the head of the table. Then there's the first district, the second district, the third district was mine. The fourth district was with Chris Pappas, and the fifth district is the last district of the 5 executive councils. And so we worked side by side. We worked with the governor to make sure we brought down the opioid crisis in the amount of overdoses that were happening every year. Those were high before the pandemic, and we brought them down right before the pandemic. We brought them down in the 2 years that we served together. Unfortunately, because of the open border and because of the prevalence of drugs that occurs because of that and the misery that it causes for people to become homeless, we've had the increase again of opioid overdoses and deaths. It's right back to pre-pandemic levels. And this is another application where if we would just uphold our oath of office, stand for law and order, make sure that we give the tools to our border patrols to enforce the laws, we would just have reduced it by 70%. And this is a failure. It's ineffective for what Chris Pappas has done.
So moving on, I mentioned I would talk about dairy, so I'm going to do that. We had a school board meeting last night. They finally decided how much money will go on the bond for anyone who did miss last one. We need to make a bond to go on the ballot in March to renovate the remaining schools, because they've deflected maintenance for over a decade. Very important maintenance, roofs, HVAC, that type of thing. And they needed to find an amount that would get a lot done so that we get a substantial chunk of everything out of the way, while also not being too much money to come out of the taxpayers' pockets. Because ever since what happened last year, no one trusts the board. They take everything they say with a grain of salt. And, the board's had to struggle with that. Some days more than others. And last night, they voted 5-1 to ask for $25 million. And I was surprised, because last meeting it seemed like they would do $20 million. Our more conservative members kind of pushed for that $20 million. And I thought it was interesting that some members were swayed to the $25 million that the Liberals were pushing. And granted, 25 is a lot better than where we started at 38. I'm much happier with 25 than 38. But I thought that was really interesting. And but with that out of the way, now that we've, spent the last 2 months, and it shouldn't have been 2 months, but we spent the last good while arguing about how much we need. Everyone needs to vote for this warrant article now. Even though it's not the exact number we wanted, we need this money. Because if it doesn't pass, we're going to be screwed. Our schools are teetering on the edge of uninhabitable because of years and years of deflecting maintenance. And as I said, the board needs to get this done, but they struggle with not having the people's trust. Trust is an important word in government. What will you do to maintain trust at the federal level?
First of all, point to my record of 7 times taking the oath of office to uphold and defend the Constitution. And a simple explanation, way back in 1784, when we put together the Constitution, many members of that convention did not think we went far enough to protect our individual rights. And they wanted something more than just the people enumerating the rights to the federal government. They wanted also to have in there protections of rights that have not been enumerated, but make sure that we have them written down what rights are protected. That was called the Bill of Rights. That didn't happen until 1794. So these members of that convention for the Constitution promised. They promised we will do something about individual rights, and they followed through. Our form of government relies quite a bit upon trust. And as you know, it all comes down to the oath of office. Can you be trusted to keep the oath of office? It includes protecting ourselves at the border, law and order, and it includes don't take away states' rights. It's something where Chris Pappas has failed us, and it's not a matter that we can't trust him, it's a matter that he broke his oath of office, and I'm trying to point out, Chris, we need today to take care of the immigration problem. Please get a petition together, get a number of congressmen to sign on with you, and present it to the administration and say, enforce our laws at the border. It's what we are here for. And in addition to that, stop voting to take away our rights. And of course, stop voting to take away our paychecks. Don't let a tax cut get repealed. Make sure it's permanent. And that's what I'll do next year.
So one brief thing before we do the sign-offs. So it's kind of unrelated, but kind of related. So it's state law in New Hampshire that you have to do the citizenship test to pass. And we did that in ninth grade, and I'm in 11th grade now. We're doing an immigration unit in history class right now. So we did half the citizenship test. We only did 50 questions. And we did it, and we'd have to give it to the teacher. Teacher would pass it to another student, so we're correcting someone else's test. We need much better civic literacy, I'll say that. To give you an idea on how bad some of the answers were. A question that was on the test, the half we got. Name a war between the North and South. They put World War II. Name the person who was president during World War II. Abraham Lincoln. My generation, and I've said before, we're not all that, I don't want to say the word, but I mean, we need to educate our students better. We need to, that's basic stuff. That's not even like, study for this and you should memorize it. That's something everyone should know. Stuff like that, and that obviously that's a small example, but we need to understand like stuff like how taxes work. We need to know how government works. Local, most importantly, all the way up to federal. And yeah, I'll end there, so feel free to give a closing statement.
Oh, sure. I appreciate being here. I asked for people to recognize that I've been trusted to be state senator for 10 years, also 4 years as an executive counselor. And I'm asking for their trust to vote for me to be their representative in Congress. And I will do my utmost to be available to you. I give you my cell phone, 603-231-7822. Please call it. That phone number has been on the state Senate website for 10 years. It's been on the Executive Council state website for 4 years. People have been very respectful of it. When they call, I may not answer right away, but I sure do get back to them and start working for you in constituent service. It's the same if I were the president of the R.E. Prescott Company. Someone calls, has a complaint, has a concern, has a need. If you don't get back to your customers, you don't get further votes of more business. And if you don't get back to your constituency, you don't get more votes to go back to service again. So that's the reason why I have served the state of New Hampshire as long as I have. I'm open-minded and also one that listens and makes sound judgment slowly to make sure we're doing the right thing every time.
Well, thank you for coming on. We definitely need you in Washington. Obviously, I can't vote, but for everyone that can vote, please vote for him. We need him in D.C. And one more thing before we go. This, as I said, this is our 50th show. I thought about naming every single person that's been on this show, but I didn't do that. I can't memorize that because we don't use teleprompters here. I don't have notes anymore. I mean, when I started the show, I'd have a piece of paper with all the subjects I wanted to talk about. Now I improvise everything. I come up with my questions on the fly. I've learned just by doing. And the reason I'm able to keep doing it is because people keep tuning in. People keep wanting to come on the show. So thank you to anyone that supported us. We're at 50. Let's do 50 more and keep going because I got a lot to say. I'm Anthony Henry. This has been America's Ask. Thank you for watching.